Well, welcome back to another episode of InHaus Podcast. And today it probably looks a little bit different because we have some special guests with us. We got Andi Rozier from Vertical Worship, and we got Hasulube and Joshi Yesudasan. How's it going, guys? Good.
It's going good.
Going good, man.
Man, thank you
Yep.
guys for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we're all worship leaders. We all serve in ministry. We all that's what we do. That's where the Lord has called us. But how do we get there? Would you guys want to share about that?
You start.
I started actually in this church. Was one of the first times I ever led worship, because we were a part of a campus organization called Crew, and I was helping kind of lead worship for that. And I was going to this church at the time. I was just playing, and Jason was like, "What are you doing here? Why didn't you tell me you play guitar or whatever?" So Pastor Jason gave me a guitar, and I was using his guitar for like my first 3 years of leading worship. And he was the worship leader here at the time before he became the senior pastor. So that was kind of my journey. It was like they needed somebody. Hey, you could play guitar. And that's kind of what got me started. I was here studying to be a physical therapist, and the Lord kind of just, we're going to go this way instead, So, and that was 10 years ago now, but it's hard to believe.
Man.
Wow.
Next
JJ?
in line, I guess. For me, it's always just been like my family has always been super musical. So for me, I was always leaning more towards that side. Little kid dreams, like being like a celebrity and all that stuff. But what really actually hit me is when I came into high school. So I was on the chapel band for my high school, and so there was a pastor over there, and I came on playing drums. Actually, I was kind of expecting to just get some clout for the year to, I don't know, be up on stage and be recognized. But something that was so different that I'd never experienced is that the pastor who was leading that group he just wanted to pull out so much and pour so much more into us than just performing and being on a stage. And so he showed me like what it truly was to have a heart of worship towards God, how the presence of God can change people and transform people. And so I think it was that year that really God placed a deep calling in my life to let other people experience the presence of God. And not only that, but give a hunger to other people to really just press into him, even in the lowest place, to give that kind of hunger, just like I believe it was Paul had when they're just praising and blessing God's name at midnight, to give people that kind of hunger. And so, yeah, for me, that's the kind of calling that he's placed on my life in worship leading.
Man, that's awesome.
I did not grow up in a Christian home. I grew up in garage bands, and we literally would rehearse for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in garages, and never get any gigs. And and then but like that was like one thing going on in my life, and another thing going on in my life. When I was 11 years old, my mom got invited to a Billy Graham crusade and got saved. And I went with her. I was I have 3 other siblings, but I went with her. So I actually remember the first worship song I ever heard.
What was it?
It was a song called Shine, Jesus, Shine. That was a massive song around that time. A guy called Graham Kendrick had just written it. And it was a big song in like the turn of the modern worship movement. And I just remember as an 11-year-old, now that I have 11-year-olds, I can see myself in that, and just like eyes wide open and just like watching an environment and knowing that something was very unique, which now I can say, wow, that I was watching the Spirit move for the first time. And so I just kind of like would go to church with my mom for a bunch of years, basically so I could drive her car around the church parking lot. And then it turned into like meeting girls, and then it turned into a summer camp that I went to, and the worship leader gave his testimony and led me to Christ. And so all the affection that I had for contemporary music contemporary lyric turned towards like worship lyric, like that.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was just like, I want to do that. And
There was no plan B. There was no
there's nothing
second
else.
guessing.
No, I just
Man, that's
I just ran at it. I put a band together. We crowdfunded our church by like selling them records that we hadn't even made yet. You
Or
know,
like-
and then there was bands like Delirious, which was cutting edge at that time, that put like the phone number on the back of their record. And so I just called the number and I was just like, I just want to go, can I come and record a record? Like I put some money together and it just went on and on and on. And yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool.
What about you, John?
Yeah, man. I grew up in a Christian home. Both my dad was a pastor, and my mom is a biblical counselor now. But she always kind of had that idea that like that's where she wanted to go. Like she wasn't sure if she just wanted to do counseling or if she wanted to do that. But one thing they always instilled in us, because we're also all adopted, me and my siblings, we're from Russia. And so one thing they instilled in us is we would pray before meals, we would do that. But more than anything, they just wanted us to know how much Jesus loved us. And so I remember being like 3. My parents say I was like 2. It doesn't matter. But they were like, instead of going to children's church, I would stay in the main service and just watch the worship team. And I was so like captivated by music. I was so captivated by, I don't even know what it was at the time, but eventually my parents would buy me guitars. And more often than not, I would break them because I was so young and I just didn't know what I was doing. But I would literally play, and I didn't know any chords or anything, but I would literally just strum and I would just sing to the Lord. Like I think my mind didn't even know what I was doing.
Right.
But my parents were like, hey, like our son is like, this is something special.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so as time went on, in 6th grade, my dad actually planted a church in the area. They're in Alabama now, they moved. But he was like, do you like want to lead worship for our church? And so it was a small gathering of like 20 people every Sunday in a movie theater. And I was like, yeah, like this is awesome. And still then I had no idea. Like I knew that I loved Jesus and I knew like the simplistics of it. But it wasn't until I would say my junior year of high school that in high school I went to a private Christian school and I was able to lead worship for their chapel team. And that's kind of where like the Lord geared my attention towards like, hey, I'm really calling you to ministry, because I remember I was set to go to school in Atlanta and study business. Like I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what everybody's doing. And so I did that. And then eventually I just got plugged in here and I've been, very blessed. I had a job at the beginning of 2019 where I was leading worship for a church. But I still believe the Lord had a lot to teach me and grow me in before I was ready to be, the guy. And so I'm really thankful that I'm serving here now, and it's definitely still something that the Lord is calling me to. Right now I'm pursuing my associates, and then I'll be going back to Liberty University online to get a bachelor's in worship ministry.
Nice.
So
That's awesome.
that's where I'm at now. And with that being said, it's kind of cool that I was telling Joshi, there's kind of like a generational type feel here, because I know, Andy, you had a lot to do with Joshi, I wouldn't say desiring worship leading, but you had a big role in his life. And then Joshi has kind of been like that role to me. Like it's been so good to be learning and growing underneath him. And now JJ as well, he's leading with you guys a lot. So like, I guess my question is like, what is the importance of that? What is the importance of mentorship, and how does that look like in your guys' roles? If that makes sense. Like, how does that look? Like, I'm trying to word this.
I get it.
Yeah.
I think that I wasn't really mentored until I came here to the US.
For sure.
And then when I came here to the US, I moved here to work for the church because the pastor would preach from the stage. Like, I don't preach to make you better listeners, I preach to make you better worshipers. Mm-hmm. So I was like, whoa, I want to be a part of that.
Right.
And I had a lot of things that needed to be straightened out in my life before I think I could qualify as a worship leader. I think at that point I was just behaving like a song leader. If God was going to give me a title.
Yeah.
And so coming under like some strong accountability was like really kind of life-saving to me, because you want someone who's going to mentor your life and not be like, don't sing this, but sing this.
Right.
But instead be kind of like, don't live that way, live this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what actually turns like a song leader into a worship leader. Unless you think that worship is just songs.
Right.
So,
Yes, sir.
and so like, I think most people like want mentorship because they're desperate for some like counsel and direction and even correction.
Yeah.
And I think that biblically, like, to be kind of like a mother and father to people is like extremely important in their life. I mean, just you look at your testimony and just kind of like being adopted,
right,
and a strong parent over your life.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, pretty much kind of just like telling you about the love of the Lord, pointing you in the right direction is exactly what I'm saying, is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But then I think like when you then start collecting these things, as I did, like I was so thankful to be under a pastor for probably like, I would say the first 5 years here was like the most formative years for me. And then I got married.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I got kind of released a little bit more. But at that point that I got married, and then your eyes become kind of aware of a lot of other things in your life that are more important than just singing songs. And you actually start to see the other side of the perspective, which is like, wait a second, this isn't my kingdom I'm trying to build. And I tell worship leaders a lot, like you basically, like, humility for a worship leader is defined by you standing in the tension of, I'm not owed this, what I'm doing, and I don't own this, what I'm doing.
That's good.
And if you stand in the middle of that, then God will bless you. And if you stand on either side, you'll just be fighting him. And if you stand right in the middle, then you actually get the truest perspective of like, what I'm doing right now is building something for someone else to step up to. And when they step up into my role, I don't want everybody to talk about how in tune my voice was or how many chords I knew how to play. I want them to talk about my life.
Jesus. Yeah.
I want them to talk about my character.
Yeah.
Like, as the loudest thing about who I am. And so therefore, like, when you like mentor someone now, you're like, well, that's what I want for you.
Right.
You know, like, that's what I want. Bro, it's not about the songs. You're like shaking people, like, it's not about the songs. It's not about the songs. Like, and they're like, I don't believe you.
Yeah. Because I feel like even early in my...
it's not about like, learning how to use Planning Center or, that's,
right.
Yeah.
Or learning how do you do what you do on stage?
Yeah.
But more like, how do you live life in such a way that honors the Lord and loves people, and that's been like the most helpful thing, even when we were in the training center, or just sitting under Pastor Jason, or several men that God has led into my life that, have been just super fundamental. Wasn't that they just showed me how to do the thing, was that they shared their very life with me, and I think that has been the most pivotal. It wasn't the 2-hour meeting right at Starbucks. It was the sitting in the car talking, or driving to some event or whatever, and just sharing our hearts with each other. And I think that's like been so fundamental for me.
I have. Do we have time to talk?
No, yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Right. I went to this event a couple of years ago that a whole bunch of worship leaders were invited to, and it was very informal, and there was about 100 people there, and it wasn't transactional for anybody in the room. There was no like, hey, if you come, then you have to do this or anything. It was just like to be there and just to gather and just to do fellowship and Brooke Lickerwood, is that her name? Yeah. I apologize. Was there with her husband, and it was like very, very casual, and she was asked to like stand up, and the only people in the room are like worship leaders from organizations and churches and bands. There's no one in the room who Brooke needs to like say the impressive word to. No one's fooled by it, right? Before she even opens her mouth. Like, it's not like a room of like 20,000 worshipers where you're like, man, I really need to nail like an intellectual thought right now. She just got up and she was just like, and she was asked kind of at the last moment to get up and say something. And she had kind of 10 minutes to speak. And she spent the whole time just talking about how she wasn't interested in giving her life to teach people how to sing songs better, but wanted just to gather people around her table and live life right in front of those people.
Man.
And I just like lost it. Like like my wife was with me and I just like I like messy cried.
Yeah.
Like in a way that I haven't done in a long time. I got no shame saying that, because all this sense of just like what I really believe mentoring to be was being said by this person that the whole world is watching. And I just thank God for that. That like you like, because I thought, well, I'm way further down the tree.
Right.
You know, like I'm just pastoring this small little community in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And this person is known by everybody across the whole world. And she has no one in this room
To impress.
And she's saying that she's going to give her life just to invite people around her table. And I was just like, yes. So, yeah.
That's powerful, because I think even early on in my like when I started doing and serving in ministry, and I had this idea that mentorship was like learning how to use Planning Center and doing just like all these small things. And I think like being underneath Jason and Joshi, and then having these guys in my life, like who actually, I think it's so important to have these guys in your life who are invested in you and like they want to know you and want to like actually have a conversation with you. Because I've been in relationships where it just feels like forced, where it's just like, oh, I'm just doing this because it's like my job or whatever. But it's like, it's super important, and it's super like, because then when you're in that position of like, man, this guy really cares about me and wants to see me grow and love the Lord, I feel like that kind of fosters that in yourself, where you're like, hey, I want to do that for other people.
It opens the door, right, for like realness and authenticity. In 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about this. He's like, you have 10,000 teachers, but you don't have many fathers. Right. And that's what he was saying. I want to be a father to you, like, you know, and it immediately changes it from learning something to a relationship, which is ultimately what the Lord is doing in us, right? He's not just trying to like,
it's not a list of rules.
Hey, learn all this stuff, right? Yeah. Live your life with me is what the Lord's inviting us into. So I think mentorship is absolutely pivotal. I don't even know if I fully like that word, because that word sounds like for something you have to do.
Right.
Make sure you get mentored, you know, but
it really is just relationship. Totally. And we just put a title on it.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know. Yeah. Well, Andy, you guys just dropped an album back in, was it March?
It was.
Yeah. It was Grace is on Our Side, and I was there when you guys recorded it, and I just think that was a super fruitful album for me. I still play it all the time. And it's like, just tell me a little bit like about the heart behind it. Why that idea of Grace is on Our Side, and like what went into that? I know that's like a super loaded question, but
No. Well, we wrote about. We released the record in. Wait, what year is it now? Like 2020, right?
Yeah.
And we recorded the record. I don't know, a few months before that, and we released it March 13th, which was the same day that the governor of Illinois shut down.
Yeah, I remember that was all.
Because we were actually on stage and had finished the rehearsal for the release concert, and I hadn't even put my guitar down, and one of the guys in leadership from the church walked in and was just like, the governor just made a statement, and
You're like, oh no,
we can't do this event. And there was this sense of disappointment. I remember driving home and just kind of having it out with the Lord in the car, and it's where it really occurred to me that the season that we were going into is not plan B. What just happened right there in the room was not plan B. That's where your mind goes to.
Right.
We have to like shift to plan B. We have to pivot. God's like, no, still functioning in plan A. Like, I looked down the corridor of time and I saw that this was going to happen. And that really helped us, I think, see that this record was going to serve that season really well.
yes.
And we wrote 80% of those songs in 2018. So I've always known that there's like a prophetic value to songs. That's not like a scary word to use, but in the sense of like, God is like, hey, I'm going to show up at your songwriters retreat. And in the very sweet, humble way that I am, I'm going to just kind of like nudge you into things that I know your church is going to need maybe 2 years from now, you know?
Right.
And, we all walk out the songwriting retreat thinking, I wrote this amazing song, you know? And God's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, but just you wait, Andy, and see what I do with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so grace is something that is available to everybody. And whatever situation that you are in, it is important that you know that grace is on your side.
Yeah.
God's grace, God's favor is towards you and not against you. If you choose to follow him and turn to him and embrace him as Christ and Savior of your life, and that's when you open up the package of a record, you have songs like God, You're Not Done Yet, and You Were Faithful Then and You'll Be Faithful Now, which is an amazing song. I love that song because it's really a song about God's resume. It's like, it's being able to look back at the mountains that you thought were impossible to get over.
Yeah.
And then you did.
Wow.
And then they were huge at that moment, but then you've made it 10 miles down the road since that point, and that mountain looks a lot smaller, but now you're standing in front of another mountain, you're like, well, this one's bigger than ever. And God's like, wait, just turn around for a second and look, that I was faithful then. So like, I'll be faithful now. And the whole song, the whole record, I think, in a sweet way, points towards that whole thing.
Yeah.
In the subtleties of different lyrics and the narrative of it. But I think that like it served this season really well. And actually like at this moment, like I'm kind of like getting my plan together just to be kind of like, let's rev the engines again and just right into the next season, because we don't know what's going to be happening in the world a year, 2 years from now. But I would love to be able to give my church songs to be able to sing that really speak to those moments. And God knows.
Exactly.
Still functioning in plan A.
Yeah. It's never plan B with God. Joshi always says that. It's never plan B.
So
I stole it from him.
Yeah.
So I guess along that same token, what would be, because JJ and I actually just wrote, and this is my first time really sitting down and writing seriously, with something that I want to like release. And what would be like your advice to young songwriters?
Categorically, top of the hill.
Right.
One piece of advice is that God did not give you a gift of songwriting to bless the church. Sorry.
No. Yeah.
Say that one more time.
God did not give you a gift of songwriting to bless the church. Just categorically didn't.
Right.
God, like, we don't need more songs. There's great songs out there. God gave you a gift of songwriting because he wants to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And that's, he saw you and knew you and created within you a means by which he could spend time with you. And if that's not the chief end of sitting in a writer's room or a Zoom session for like 3 hours, like I can hardly pray for 3 minutes without my mind wandering.
Yeah.
Yet I can sit in a writer's room for 3 hours with my Bible open and know we spent great time with the Lord today. And if this counts for nothing, then God was like, yeah, but I got to hang out with you for 3 hours and you hardly can pray to me for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So, and where that all comes in, what happens is that the songwriter then says, no, what I got given is this, therefore, like, let me just say, therefore, like, when songs seem to just kind of like come out of the sky sometimes, or you actually spend months and months working on them, like, it's still at the end of the day, you still feel this sense of just kind of like, wow, this was awesome. Like, I love singing this and we wrote it. It's a gift, right? And it's not an award. And like, you and I have talked about a little bit about this offline. Like if it was an award, he would call it an award.
Right.
Right. And also if it was an award, it would be about you.
Exactly.
And because award shows are about the people receiving the awards, but gifts are about the giver. So the best gifts that I've ever been given don't make me think about myself. They make me think about the person who gave me the gift. And so when you write songs, God is definitely not saying, wait a second, I know you've been singing, Lord, I need you, but let me just change the narrative here, guys. Like, actually, I need you.
Yeah.
Like, just FYI, just like, God's not going to do that. He's not going to like change the, for songwriters, everybody needs me, but with songwriters, I need them.
Right.
Like he wants to use.
Yeah. like God's not going to do that with you. But instead, he just wants to like give out these songs that are actually like gifts that represent the relationship and the friendship that you have with him, just like a regular gift does.
Yeah.
And often I've kind of talked about songs being kind of like boats and how, you could go and sit on the side of a lake and see like 2 sailboats out on a lake and their sails are up and they could be exactly the same sailboat, but one's moving faster than the other. And that's still because in 2020, only God can put the wind in the sails of a boat. And so you can't manifest how great a song is going to be. God is completely in control of that. Your job is simply just to build the boat and then push it out on the sea of grace that God has given us to push these boats out on and see what God does with it. But just to round this point up, sorry.
No, you're good, man. This is good.
Is like if you built like there's a guy called Pete Sanchez who is the worship pastor down at New Life in Colorado Springs, where like Desperation is.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think Pete's probably in his late 60s, early 70s now, and he sat down in his 40s, I think, to write 150 songs, a song for each psalm. So what he did is he would read the psalm and then he would sing something that was an expression of that psalm. And so he did. Jeez. And it took him a while to do it. And one of those songs is I Exalt Thee. Which everybody knows.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you didn't know who Pete Sanchez was until I just told you.
Right, I did.
Right? And do you know what? Pete Sanchez has 149 boats that God was like, those 149 are just for you and me. So who wins? Pete wins. Pete wins. Right? Like we got to share one of them.
I think that's so good. How
we look at songwriting as just kind of like, if a ton of people sing this song, then I've won. Pete's like, no, I won. I got 149 songs that you'll never hear, but every time I push one of those boats out on the lake, Jesus is in that boat with me, and it's just us, and we don't have to share it with one single person.
Wow.
And that's why, like in songwriting, just like head back to the boat shed, write some songs, push them out in the lake, and know that like the greatest joy out of that whole thing, the greatest gift out of writing those songs might just be that boat only has room for me and Jesus. Wow. Right?
Boom. Yeah, no, that's good, because I feel like as JJ and I were sitting down to write this song that we just wrote, I wanted to make it very clear, and in my own mind, I feel like there's always that temptation to be like, man, this is going to be like the sickest song, you know? Like there's always that.
We're going to make it after this.
Yeah, there's always that temptation. But I wanted to be like, hey, man, like I want to write with you, but I want this to be like, kind of like we were talking, like I want that to be just like the relationship, right? Like I want to get to know you more through this. And if the Lord does something with it, awesome. But I feel like there's that attitude of surrender, which is where I kind of feel like, you know, like the song came from, you know, because I feel like in that season, and JJ, you can speak into this too, there was just like a number of things, decisions, thoughts, ideas that we were like, man, like I've been holding on to this with a tight fist. Like I've been holding on to like reputation and time and decisions and all this stuff with like, man, I want to do this, or I'm going to make this big decision on my own. And then God, I'll give you like whatever comes after that. So we wrote the song Have It All, and it was just like this idea of like, God, like literally like take it, like have it, you know? And so I don't know, JJ, if you want to speak into that at all, but that was like my heart behind it. And I thought, you know, it was good like to write and to actually have a relationship rather than, man, our main focus is to write this and push it out as soon as we can so that people can hear it and we can just bless, like you said, like it's not to bless the church. So, yeah.
I think, behind that was definitely like for both of us, it was like a need to really express to God, like, I don't have control. Like, okay, so I think it's like in the first place, I was actually watching a message the other day that really made it clear for me. So we always tell God, like, take control. Lord, I give you control. I give you control of this moment. I give you my heart. But I think it's so funny how, like, in the first place, it doesn't even belong to us.
Right.
And so it's like, Lord, I'm going to give you the illusion that this belongs to me. I'm going to give up this illusion. And so, I think this was a great opportunity to really kind of just put that into song And where it does encourage the church, it encourages you to let go of this illusion that you do have control, or you have the next day already in your hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was definitely a great time to begin this process of songwriting. Like, I'm still like a little baby songwriter. And
Right. Same.
like Andy was saying before, like, it's great quality time that you spend in songwriting, that God really shows up and that you're able to really see his heart. And so, yeah, it was a great experience for sure.
Yeah, man, because this is also heading into a season where you had some decisions to make. I know you're headed off to Liberty, and you're gonna start studying and start really pursuing. You made the collective, right? So
Yes, sir. Yeah.
what was your thought process during all this? We talked about it a little bit. It was a pretty crazy season.
Oh my Lord. The whole process was, I would say, was about like 5 months, the whole waiting process. But how I would describe it is legit, like, God's hand was just over the entire thing.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is just, whatever God speaks to you, if he speaks a word to you, there's no doubt, no night, no darkness, no nothing that can like whisper away what God has already spoken.
Yeah.
What he says is going to come to pass no matter what. So there's a whole story behind that, but I'll say a little bit. It kind of all started at a worship cohort night. So Andy was there, but I'd never really met him personally. So it was a good night. We were heading out, and all of a sudden, I kind of just felt the Spirit just leading me to walk back into the room. So I walked back in. I was kind of just talking in there, and Andy came up to me, and so it was just like in that moment that I was presented with an opportunity to record. Eventually, I was able to send an audition, and this is all just by the hand of God. And there's so much that just goes into this, in God's intentionality and his positioning. So I would just say that, to make it short, this whole season is just, it's been learning to wait on God, and it's been learning to trust that whatever he does is good. I would say that better than the outcome or being on the collective even, I would say that I actually learned to like appreciate the waiting so much more, just because
Let's go.
he taught me so much in the waiting.
Yeah.
He like revealed so many struggles to me in the waiting, and like it's in this waiting that he actually bared so much fruit and pruned me so much, and he kind of like introduced things to me that he said like, nah, this can't go with you into the next place. This can't go with you into the next place, because I'm gonna need you to deal with things that you can't have in your life anymore.
Right.
And so I think he used this season of waiting to really prune me, and it was so much more valuable than the actual outcome of whatever was to happen if I made the collective or if I didn't. And so I think it makes the next season that much more valuable and exciting, just because the whole time being able to stay with God and stick with God, it teaches you and it prepares you, and you're able to let go of some of the things that might have hindered you in the next season that he might be calling you into.
Yeah.
So
That's really good.
yeah.
That's sweet, man. Yeah, it's been a joy to hear your heart behind all that.
Yes, bro.
And it's been, it kind of, reminds me of just God's like faithfulness, and in the waiting, like he's actually working, because I feel like a lot of times we don't see it and we're like, oh, like, well, maybe he's taking a break,
Man.
but like, no, like he's always doing something. Like Andy was saying, like there's no plan B. Like the God of the universe is constantly working. So it's been,
Right.
it's just been encouraging to hear from you, because I feel like when you hear it from other people, like we know these things, right? But it kind of reassures us and kind of like reminds us of who our God is.
Yeah, it's so encouraging, because like you can see somebody else go through a season, and because of their testimony, because they share it with you, it's almost like an encouragement to you. It is an encouragement to you.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you forgot like who God is, but it's like you see God working in somebody else's life. You see his hand. And so you know that even if it's like a sit down season for you, or you don't necessarily see something just coming straight at you, you can still believe and know that God is not going to waste whatever you're in, whatever season you're in. So,
and that's kind of been, I feel like that's kind of been my theme, whatever you would say of 2020 is like the phrase that always comes to my mind, and I told you this, is like no moment is wasted. Like with the Lord, no moment is wasted. Like he's always working things, like Romans says, for our good and for his glory. And so I think just like being reminded of that was super helpful. And so I guess lastly, like, and this is kind of an open-ended question, is what is like the Lord doing in your heart? What is he teaching you in this season? And I guess you could answer as much or as little as you want, but I think it's when a group of guys or when a group of people like just share what the Lord is doing, kind of like we were just saying, like it builds up and it encourages. So I guess whoever wants to say anything, but
Go on, Joshi. You haven't said anything for a while.
yeah, Judge.
I think like everybody in the world right now, it's just the joy of not doing anything, not having a ton to do.
Right.
In one sense, I mean, it's just different stuff to do, I guess, but like the joy of just being. I think I've just been, with all the extra time in social distancing or whatever we call it, just enjoying being with my family. And I think through that, Lord was just like, and that's how I feel when I have your attention, 100%. Like that's what the Lord's heart is as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we know that, right? Like I think we know that on like a, yes, the Lord desires relationship level. But when you can feel a little glimpse of what the Lord feels when he has all of us, it's just like open the door to like what the point of relationship with the Lord is. And I've just been really soaking in that and enjoying that and delighting in it. And it takes the pressure off, man. Like the pressure to perform, the pressure to make sure you get all the, your eggs in, what is the saying? Eggs in a basket.
Right.
And it's just like the just being with the Lord part of it has been so refreshing. And just developing some friendships with people that we've just kind of gone to church together. We've just kind of been in a small group together. It's given some opportunities for that. And I think the Lord is just, that's what the Lord is after, is authenticity and realness and being yourself and not pretending to be someone else. And in the last year, I feel like the Lord has just really been gracious to help uncover some of that in my own life. And that's like what the Lord's doing in me, man.
That's
showing me his relational side, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's just God and I'm just human, and kind of, like kind of removing that barrier and seeing him more as, I actually want to be with you. I don't just love you because I have to. I like you too, And that's been really, really encouraging to me. And, there's so many things that we're obviously grieving in this season, but that's one thing I'm holding on to is, and so, yeah.
For me, I would say for this season, it would be to lean on God. And I think this is something that he really wants to instill in me, like right now in this time, like at this age in this season, because I would consider like where I am right now, even though it's like so exciting, this next season, like I would consider like where I am right now, it feels kind of like the wilderness. Like sometimes you don't necessarily always like hear his voice, but it's that very thing that he's kind of just saying to me, like lean into me more. And it's when you hunger for him and when you just lean into him and you press in, it's like those moments where you really begin to actually like receive direction from him, correction, where he starts to place people in your life. And so I think he's trying to teach me right now to lean into him. So that when I come out of this season of the wilderness, that I'll still know how to lean on him, even when I have abundance in supply or whatever that is. And so, yeah, for me, he's teaching me to lean on his understanding.
So good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's been like a season of identity. I've been going hard at worship leading for 20 plus years, and at least for the last 15, I've asked myself periodically, like, who is Andy without the weekend service? And because it's the one consistent, I don't get up at the same minute every day. I don't spend time with God at the same time every day. But the weekend rehearsal, sound check is the same time every week, and the services are the same time every week. And it's like defined this pattern in my life. And I've asked myself a number of times, like, if you take that away, like, does it change my identity? And and so it helped me to just kind of like press into like, I have this banner over my life that says worship leader. It's who I'm known by. I'm not going to like try and shake it off, but to really try to dig into what that looks like without song, what that looks like without rehearsal, what that looks like without a service to show up to, and do I, if I'm looking through the eyes of the Lord, do I still retain the same title?
Yeah.
And so that's been like that's actually kind of propelled me to like dig into like a new level of theology and doctrine and also like so there's like the special revelation of God speaking through his word, but then there's also like general revelation of just God just like giving me a backyard.
Yeah.
And propelling me to just be kind of like, go and do something with this. Like I gave this to you. So like I went and built a tree house for my kids and I see them like go down the zip line and have so much fun. And I think to myself, like, I'm doing that because it's the kid in me.
Yeah.
And I'm a kid in a big kingdom. I'm just older and taller than what I was when I was their age. but I'm still looking through the same pair of eyes. And so like I'm just using this season just to kind of claim some innocence and identity back while we have the shift in schedule to be able to do it.
Yeah. That's good. Guys, thanks so much. I think this was just awesome and fruitful for me too. I think that the Lord's done a lot. And so thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And where can we find you guys? Where can we, if they want to look you up or whatever, where are you guys at?
Check me on Instagram, JJ_HASULUBE, Hasulube. Yup. So if you want to check me on Instagram, that's the plug. So, yup.
I'm on the Instagram as well. Andi Rozier. I keep one picture up at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna
I noticed
something
that too.
about
So
that.
yeah,
That is.
yeah. I think that personally for me, the scrolling through of pictures gives a false narrative of my life.
Wow.
It says something about my life that's not true. So I just went down to one picture, and every time I upload another one, I'm like, I just archive.
I was wondering like what was behind that. I was
Yeah,
like, there's
the
definitely
preview.
something
Yeah, I saw
like
that.
deep behind
Yeah.
I
this.
saw that.
I thought it was like a glitch in the Matrix.
No,
That's really
it's
cool.
very intentional.
Yeah, man. Josh?
I don't know how long I'll be on social media anymore. But Instagram, J92,
Nice.
and Facebook.
Awesome.
I guess I
my
should
name.
also give a plug for Vertical Worship. And
Yeah.
like,
Yes,
Yeah, you're
dude.
right.
yeah. So Vertical's like the songwriting arm of of our church in Chicago, big things cooking right now, man. So
Awesome.
keep
Cooking
your
in the
eyes on
kitchen.
that. Keep your eyes on
Hey.
that. So.
Well, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll